Yes, I'm Hector Haines, and I'm a trail runner, a race organizer, and a key account manager at Race ID. And I'm going to talk about risk and how to assess your risk, and also, a little bit how to mitigate risks associated with organizing an outdoor event. Risk really is talking about, okay, what is this problem that can happen, and how can we deal with it? And so some common problems, let's just think about it. The weather. The weather can be a problem. You can have rain, you can have snow, you can have high winds, you can even have other types of weather in terms of, hot weather can cause heat stroke and all sorts of dehydration problems for your participants. So the weather can be a common problem. Other problems can just be related to high volumes of participants. So, thousands of participants in a small area within your start-finish arena. That can be considered a risk on many levels, as well as the way you build your arena. Perhaps, you've got a lot of electrical wires running around in the arena, which can be both a trip hazard and an electrical shock hazard. And the weather can play into that as well. You have to protect your electrical connections from the weather. So there's so many risks that are common with setting up an outdoor event, and not just with the course. I've mentioned a few here, but of course the terrain that your participants will run through has risks associated with it in terms of its technicality. The trails and these sort of things, or cold water if they're swimming in cold water, and this sort of thing has its inherent risk. Even spectators of your race, there's a risk associated with having spectators, and you want to keep your spectators safe. They have to be in certain areas, or you have to make them aware of the risks of traffic, or of emergency services have to have access. So you need to keep spectators out of those emergency service corridors and these sort of things, and as well as any risks associated with food or drink or anything like that you might have around for participants. You need to make sure that is all safe, obviously, as well. So, a great way to start is to just sit down and create a big long list of risks and problems that you can foresee with your race. And at Race ID, we've created a nice little article on our blog, and it lists a lot of common risks in there that you can just take and write down as well. But it's not exhaustive list. You have to think for yourself, okay, what is my race? What are the particular risks associated with my race? So there's those. Then I would recommend creating a little spreadsheet and a little risk assessment. You take the list of your risks and you write them all down in boxes, and then you give them a score. And at Race ID, we've also created a little risk assessment template. Quite simply, you score your risk in terms of severity. So that's how much harm can it cause. And so some risks will be quite harmful for participants, or even large economic risks to your event. You might score quite highly. And then, of course, along with the harm goes the likelihood of occurrence. So, a lightning strike is a deadly event if it happens to one of your participants, but the likelihood is quite low. So you might score quite highly on the severity, but low on the likelihood, and that gives you an overall score when you multiply those factors together as being quite low. And so you go through all your lists, all your risks, you give them a score, and you get to the ones that are the most damaging for your event. Once you've scored your risks and you understand, okay, how likely is anything to happen and how damaging it is if it happens, then you get to understand, okay, these are the ones I need to focus my attention on, these are the ones that I need to mitigate. And mitigation really involves reducing either the harm of the risk or the likelihood. So the severity and the harm, or reducing the likelihood. And sometimes you have to do both. So, for instance, if you have a road crossing in your race, and your participants have to cross a road, then you have to mitigate the risk of traffic being involved in an accident with your participants. You have to mitigate it by controlling the traffic perhaps, or even perhaps finding an alternative route so your participants can pass or cross the road without being in conflict with any traffic. So that would be both reducing the risk and the likelihood for that to happen. Yeah, that's a great question, and usually I would say that depends. Of course, smaller races perhaps, and races that have close proximity to emergency services anyway, within big cities might not need so much an ambulance on site. But more remote races, and of course races with large numbers of participants, where the risk of someone having a heart attack would be multiplied by many times, then those sort of races of course will probably require emergency services on site. And these sort of things can be found by talking with your local authorities and speaking with others within the race community, and understanding, okay, what is the level of my event and what is the level of the involvement of emergency services that is required. Other than just think of your races early and think of your risks early, start planning for those early, reduce either the severity or the likelihood of as many of those as possible. And yeah, if you can get it all done before your race, then you can sleep happily before race day and just enjoy the happy participants that you have on your stage.